This founder believes the world of sports will experience many changes in the next 10 years. He believes that to protect the health and well-being of athletes, teams sanctioned on-field practice time will reduce by 15 to 20% by the year 2025. All the way from the best coast, Jason Robinson and Playbook 5. This founder believes the medical and sports collaboration space is the biggest untapped market in the sports and fitness industry. Give it up for Partha Unnava and Lasso. Thank you, founders, for those introductions. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
All right, welcome everybody. We are in the Elite 8 for the Sports Startup Debate Competition. This is the athlete performance in the wearables category, and we have two amazing founders, Jason and Partha. All right, founders, let's get ready to debate. To get things started, we're going to flip it off with a coin to decide who will field the first question. So, Jason, would you like heads or tails?
Tails.
It is heads. So, Partha, would you like to receive the first question or defer?
I'll defer.
All right. So, Jason, you'll have 45 seconds to answer the question uninterrupted. It's going to be a hard stop. And then, Partha, you'll have your 45 seconds, and then you guys can go back and forth. Good luck to the both of you. Let's put 10 minutes on the clock, and we'll start things off with the first question. How important is protection of your company IP for you? And the follow-up to that is, what steps have you taken to protect yours thus far?
Right. So currently, I would say IP is probably a 6.5 out of 10 for us. IP can be costly, especially if you're making a lot of changes to it. And as a company that is operating in a very innovative, fast-paced industry like virtual reality, we do expect to make some product changes and alterations in the next 18 to 24 months. So with that being said, we aren't really invested in any heavy IP there. However, we are invested in protecting our brand assets, which we feel like are the most important right now as we're continuing to develop the brand. We feel like as we become more of a market leader and we have more market share and innovation becomes more of a priority for us, we see ourselves bumping that up the priority list, and it will become more of a 10 out of 10.
Partha?
Cool. So I'm not sure if I can necessarily respond, but I can answer the question considering that we're in two totally different industries. For us, IP is huge because it's physical products. So part of the fun with our company is that we're the first ones to do compression in terms of how it affects the body. So in apparel, the entirety of the IP landscape is that you have a bunch of patents, mostly design patents, very little utility. And the core of it is, this is how the outside environment affects the body. And we came into the landscape and we said, that's great, but the clothes you wear can actually affect your body and how it moves. So we are actually the first utility patent in that space that has to do with how apparel affects the body's movement, which has been awesome for us. And we use what's called a patent thicket, which is my president Jared's favorite phrase that we use. But the gist of it is that we have layers of patents designed all the way back through utility that not only encompass every joint in the body, but they encompass different pieces of our technology. And so it's a filing strategy that is on the sophisticated side from an IP standpoint, but it is kind of par for the course for a product company, especially one where we feel we've created a new product category, and so we want to take all steps to protect that. And a little differently from your company, Jason, it's harder to patent algorithms, data, that sort of side of things, and it's much easier to find workarounds when people do put those patents out and they share exactly how they're doing it. For us, we're able to be a little bit more broad because the beauty of a utility patent in our space is that we're creating something very novel. So you would have to go a whole phase of innovation beyond what we're doing to really be able to compete. And it's a very, very crowded space beyond that. So that's kind of how we thought about our IP strategy.
Well, let me ask a quick follow-up question here. So since you guys do have different products and the IP might be valuable to both of your companies differently, so how would you deal with a situation if you were threatened from an IP perspective, a data perspective? It doesn't necessarily be about a patent or a trademark, but what's your process of dealing with a potential IP threat? So Jason, if you could just kind of follow up with that process.
So, I mean, you got to rely relying on the facts. I mean, the best thing you can do, it becomes a litigation issue, and you have to show what you've been doing. So if there was an opportunity or something that came up where someone felt like we were infringing, or we felt someone else was infringing, we would first create a backlog in which we have tracked everything. So we know when we've been doing things, we know why we've been doing things, and we try to show our case. I mean, it's the most you can do. It becomes a he said, she said type situation, and we would rely on the facts. And usually the most transparent company or party in that matter comes out on top. If the facts are in your favor, they are, and if they're not, then the patent, the USPTO essentially will agree on the other side. But we feel like the best thing to do is just show what you've done, why you've done it, where this decision was made, be as detailed as you can, so hopefully they believe whatever your claim is.
And Partha?
Yeah, just to add into that, transparency is big in those types of situations. I have to be a little bit careful with this question because I can't get too specific about how we would deal with an infringement. But what I can say on a high level is that, especially in product infringement cases, a big challenge that companies have is larger companies will really step on top of your IP landscape before patents are issued. Part of the reason we used the IP strategy we did is we were able to get certain aspects of our technology cleared prior to some of the more major aspects of our technology that allow us to enforce earlier on, as opposed to a utility patent, which can take anywhere from 3 to 7 years. And so that really fed into how we built our patents and went through the process, because we wanted to enforce as soon as possible.
Great. All right, we'll move on to the next question. So as a founder dealing with internal decision making, what would you do if you had to decide between two options? You believe one option is correct and your entire team believes the other option. How would you handle that? And Partha, if you could lead with that question.
Yeah, totally. So my answer is very close. I had the pleasure of seeing Ray Dalio speak a little while back, and got to chatting with him afterward and really getting into the heart of how they do decision making at Bridgestone. And one of the really unique things that they do over there is they weight everybody's opinion based on their areas of expertise. So the way that we think about decision making is that everybody on the team, I mean, if I didn't hire people more intelligent than myself, I would not be building a great company. So everyone on the team is there because they're better than me at whatever they're doing. So the core of each decision is when it falls into someone's area of expertise, they get more voice in that matter. And a big challenge is that you have to be cognizant of when people's personal biases affect their decision making. So if you can judge and identify that somebody has removed personal bias from the situation, has just brought their industry expertise, and really at the end of the day, it comes down to a gut feeling on people's parts as opposed to a direction you move forward. There's so much information we gather, right? So subconsciously we kind of have an inkling of where we want to go. That ultimately helps.
Sorry to cut you off there, but we'll give Jason his 45 seconds there.
So the first thing you have to do is remove yourself from the equation. And I think any leader has to understand that if you really have that self-belief and that confidence in yourself to be a leader, that you've put the right people in place. So you have to remove yourself from the situation, see it from that perspective, and then have some level of trust. Then it just becomes, okay, how can you back your claim up? The worst thing is when you hear something, and it happens with my co-founder, not all the time, but often, because we're in a fast-paced industry, and it's like, okay, that's your opinion. Now, what's the why behind it? And I do the same. There's my opinion. What's the why behind it? And it becomes, what's the burden of proof as to why you feel that way? And when I'm listening to that from other members of the team, I'm listening to how much they're tied to the solution and the overall collective goal of the team, not their own personal agenda. So for me, I always go back to intellectual honesty. Is your perspective for you, or is your perspective for the overall consensus and the goal of the team? And sometimes I'm wrong, and it's okay, because again, I trust that I put the right people in the right space to make those decisions.
Great.
Yeah, and just to respond to that. Yeah, I mean, I love Jason. I love where your head's at, man. He's pretty spot on, and I can tell we both come from a sports background. A big part of leadership is being able to listen to your teammates and let them do what they do well. The one thing that I would add is the CEO title, right? The leader of the whole team is there at some point because they have a vision that is more than each person is seeing individually. And so there are times where you may not have all of the proof in data or numbers. And there's a lot of times, especially in innovation, where you're pushing the boundary. And so there's no data that the road you're traveling is going to pan out, other than that founder's experience in the space, everything that they're seeing, plus the fact that they're not only getting info from one silo of their business, they're getting it from every single aspect, plus all the investors, plus all the different partners they talk to, plus all their peers in the space. So there's this kind of X factor of decision making that can play in there. So I feel that that's also important to consider. Although I will say, echoing Jason, kind of just coming back to the root of all, you put great people in the place to make great decisions, and it's the leader's job to make sure that aligns with the central vision of the company.
Great. We'll move on to the next question. How would you deal with high churn in your first or second cohort of customers? And are there any tactics for reducing churn before it happens? Jason, you'll lead that question.
Yeah, so your churn is an indication of the misalignment between your product and your users' needs. So I would back it all the way up and just ask more questions. So you want to rely on, making user-driven decisions. You want to rely on making user data-driven decisions, and try to get ahead of that. And I mean, the only way to reduce it going forward is to continue to have those conversations, to continue to invest time and resources in that. Oftentimes you see companies kind of go this way, and then this little thing called listening starts to dwindle a little bit. You have to keep listening as you continue to grow to make sure that what you're creating is still relevant for your users' needs. So the best thing I would suggest is just staying in contact with the person that you're serving.
Partha?
Yeah, I'd like to add on to that. So I agree fundamentally that the communication with the customer is critical to be able to reduce aspects like churn. One of the things that we're fortunate in is we have a remarkably low return rate as compared to many other peers in our category. And the reason why is that 0 to 1 phase, when you're starting something and really figuring out product market fit, the point is not to go fast. The point is to have conversation, to have communication with your customers, and to take the time to really understand their needs. And so what we did in that phase was we spoke to every single one of our customers, and we're a direct to consumer business, so that's a lot of phone calls. But we did that for a year because we wanted to fully understand exactly what drove those customers. And that can not only feed back to product development, but it can give you so much guidance on marketing, branding, and the future strategy you would take to grow your company. So that limited kind of patient launch of the product where you have heavy communication as you're determining product market fit is so critical to be able to reduce aspects like churn.
Anything else to add, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that, early on, you're going to make changes. I think anybody that comes out with a new company in a new endeavor, you don't know everything, right? So there's going to be some level of churn. I think the conversations are going to help you determine whether or not you make major pivots or you make minor course adjustments. And that's the whole point of that whole deal.
Great. And we'll move on to the final overtime question here. So you have recently obtained a large brand or account as your customer, but supporting them has stalled your ability to gain new ones. What is the first step you take in trying to fix this issue? Partha, you'll lead with that question.
Totally. So one of the things that I think is really critical when you're an entrepreneur, especially when you're building a business, is you have to be clever. You have to think on your feet. One of the first things that we do when we end up in situations where there's a problem is we look for solutions that are unique. And in a situation with a large customer, there's a lot of ways to accelerate things like cash flow. So I think from my perspective, the first thing I would ask for is more payment up front so I can hire more people to then continue to achieve my goals. And that's kind of a mentality that we've adopted is we're very, I would say outside the box in terms of how we think of solutions to problems, where we can kind of hack the system of cash flow to be able to accelerate growth and achieve our goals faster. I think that a lot of thinking can centralize around, well, I can have this or this. But I think that when you play with things like cash flows and really get sophisticated with your finances and overall business governance strategies and processes, there's a lot of room for improvement always. It's very rare to see a startup that's fully capped out from an efficiency standpoint.
Jason?
Yeah, so I think first you have to always take care of your own backyard. So, and that means for us, who's generating revenue, who's stimulating your growth, and how are you prioritizing that client? Now, you always have to grow. And this is important for us because in sports, loyalty is so important. Like, especially when it comes to working with teams and athletes. One school has it, they see the other school has it. Well, what happens if I get it? And we've had to kind of make this dance a few times over the past years. And what we do is, if it's a large client, we look into hiring personnel that can help us both serve those clients' needs, but also allow us to go out and create new market share and also have great customer service. But we have to quantify that situation too. We have to see what's the LTV of that client, what's the LTV of the rest of the market, which one do we serve from a value perspective, and that's really where that decision comes back to. So it's always coming back to us for the data and trying to learn as much about both subsets and figure out which way is the path best for us to go down.
Great. Anything else to add to that, Partha?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's spot on from the sense of how you look at decision making on that corporate perspective. And I think just to tie it back again, it doesn't have to be an either or. There's a lot of problems that we face in business that really cause us to think, well, what should I do to move forward? And there's a lot of unique ways that you can pull together, whether it's resources you need, whether it's help you need. I mean, I've seen people use interns in really ridiculous ways, as well as advisors. We really lean on our advisory board a lot in terms of helping us do the things that we need to do when we can't afford to hire more personnel at any given point because things are tighter and we're pushing for growth still. So I think there's a lot of ways to solve problems. And I think Jason's right from the fundamentals of you have to determine whether that path is even something you want to go down. With, say, in this case, a very, very large client that is very different from your regular customer mix. You have to understand if that's where you want to take your business. That's spot on. And I think once you identify that is, you have to then start thinking about creative ways to problem solve to help you get to that goal as quickly as possible without disturbing the set of processes and systems you've already built.
Great. Well, thank you for that well thought out debate. Let's move on to the judges' response analysis. If you haven't already, use the hashtag #DebateForCovid. Let us know who you think won that round and support our Pledge It campaign, which will support frontline workers during the CDP COVID-19 Relief Fund. Now on to the judges' votes.
Now, let's introduce our judges. First up, Vera Schroeder, associate at Safar Partners. And next, Matt Kramer, senior strategist and portfolio manager at RGA Ventures. And lastly, Joshua Martin, philanthropist, investor, and NFL linebacker for the Jets. Let's kick it over to our head referee, Nick.
That wraps up an amazing debate in the Elite 8 for the athlete performance and wearables category between Partha and Jason. And now we are on to the judges for their analysis and picks. So to kick things off, Vera, if you could please provide your analysis followed by your pick.
Sounds great. So Partha and Jason, you're both really solid. And I don't think there was a question where either one of you was way off. So my comments are going to be a little bit nitpicky. I'll go question by question. So the first one on IP, Partha, I thought it was very smart that you put in a sentence that describes what your product is. So in the first answer, you're already telling us what you do, and that really flavors the rest of this conversation. It's very smart to do. I also really like that you gave us an overview over how IP works in your field, which puts your answer into perspective. And then, Jason, the way you answered the infringement part was very smart. So having a culture of recording how you do your decision, why you do what is very smart. That's spot on. But overall, I give the answer to Partha. Then for the question on internal decision making, Jason, the getting to the why, trusting the people that you work with is so important. So if you hire a team that can't make decisions that you support, you're doomed anyway. So thank you for highlighting that. And then Partha, I appreciate you addressing the fact that as the CEO, you're the leader of your team. So at the end of the day, you will have to make decisions even if you don't have all the data to support that. overall, I have this question tied. Then on addressing high churn of your customers, Jason, you're right on in saying that if it happens, it's generally due to a misalignment in your customers and your products. So listening to your customers, reinventing your product to address it directly, and being ready to pivot if necessary is great strategy. Then Partha, your answer was mainly the same, so I give it to Jason here. Then on the question of large customers tying up your resources. So the way I heard it, this was almost a trick question, because if you have a large customer, that's not always a problem. So Jason, as you described correctly, if you go through the analysis and you see that, well, I have this great new customer that's very big, tying up resources, that might actually create so much value for a company that you missing out on the 10 new smaller customers is not a problem overall. So I give this answer to Jason and Jason overall.
Great, thank you, Vera, for that. So Jason has 1 vote, and now we'll move over to Matthew for his analysis and pick.
Thanks, guys. Jason, Partha, you guys both demonstrated a really strong knack, I think, for leadership and an ability to organize your thoughts in a really coherent manner. And I think you guys are both well suited to, build very strong emerging companies. So appreciate your time and your insights. I think on the first topic, I side with Vera on her analysis. I think, Partha, you showed a really strong sort of grasp of the nuances around intellectual property and the different implications there. I think, Jason, you really demonstrated a strong sort of organizational approach to how you think about cataloging the development for your company along the way. And I think that lends itself really well to to resolving conflict there and being in a good position to deal with matters that are maybe unforeseen. But I think still Partha give you the slight edge there on question number 1. On question number 2, both great answers there. I think, Jason, the way that you sort of illustrated your belief in trusting your own ability as a founder and as a leader to assemble the right talent around you is something that really resonated with me. Drawing on some of my own personal experience at a startup in a high growth environment, I remember the early days of sitting in a single room together with leadership and all the way down to junior employees working across a variety of different disciplines. And we really, the CEO and the founder of the company really took to heart of, not, thinking his voice was bigger than anyone else's and, valuing everyone's opinion. And I think that really was instrumental in our success and our ultimate acquisition. So I really, think you had a strong sort of vision for how you would govern, your team there. So I give the nod on number 2 to you, Jason. In terms of number 3, I'm going to go with a little bit of a cop out here and say there was a tie. I think you both had really strong viewpoints on how to deal with customer churn. Partha, I really thought that you, demonstrated as a founder in the early stages of your business. I think in that 0 to 1 phase you alluded to of reaching out to customers, even in a direct to consumer business, which is nearly impossible to find the time to do, but trying to have those one-on-one interactions with customers is a really, really strong way to better understand how to position your product and develop it and make sure that you're delivering something of value to your market. So I'm going to go with a tie there. And then on number 4, I think slight edge to Jason. I think, Jason, you really had a strong approach to talking about, how you would prioritize still maintaining a engagement with an existing customer base and not losing sight of the value that they provide you there as a business and sort of the importance of loyalty in sport, which is something that I think transcends that industry and applies to all of business. And I think your approach to thinking about long LTV, lifetime value of a customer, and really thinking about measuring what the potential impact of a new customer is and not displacing your existing ones, I think was a really sound methodology to think about there. So I'm going to go with Vera and side with Jason in this one, but both of you guys demonstrated a strong ability to lead teams, and I think you're both set up for success.
Thank you for that, Matthew. And that's 2 out of 3 judges' votes for Jason to give him a ticket to the Final Four. Congratulations on that. We actually have another judge with some amazing insight as well. So we're going to pass it over to Josh Martin for your analysis and pick.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, Jason, Partha, you're both clearly very knowledgeable, right? I play football for a living, so I have a unique perspective, and one of the things that really stood out to me, I won't go question by question, the decision's been made, but one of the things that stood out to me was this idea and concept of team. That really appealed to me, Jason. And then there is one point, Partha, where it seemed that you couldn't really get into the detail that was necessary to answer some of the questions due to, I think it was a question around IP and how you might defend against an infringement case. I just like how, Jason, you're to the point. Partha gave you a lot of credit, man. You were spot on a lot of questions. So to me, it was just kind of simple. So I had to side with Jason as well.
Great. Thank you for that, Josh. And thank you, Matthew, Vera, and Josh, for all those analysis. Congratulations, Jason. You got yourself a ticket to the Final Four. And if you haven't already, please donate to our COVID-19 CDP Relief Fund to support that amazing cause. Use the hashtag #DebateForCovid to let us know who you think is going to win the next round. But thank you all for some amazing insight to our founders and listeners. And now we're on to the next round.
Wow, those are some great debates. Thank you, founders and judges, for that effort. Hopefully everyone tuning in had some fun and learned a little bit as well. Remember to tune in tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for the second part of our Elite 8 debates. And also remember our Pledge It campaign. We're trying to raise $10,000 for the CDP COVID-19 Relief Fund going to frontline healthcare workers. The website for that is pledgeit.org/startup debate. You can find our campaign page. If you can share that with your network or donate, thank you in advance for that support. Use the hashtag #DebateForCovid. Have a great evening. Hopefully we'll see you back tomorrow night. Thanks.